episode 296 of the Aggressive Progressive podcast. Why do we always let Trump change the subject? Let's start the show.
We are now the defenders of the stronghold of democracy and of equal opportunity.
You and I, as citizens, have the obligation to shape the debates of our time, not only with the votes we cast, but with the voices we lift.
The people are looking for honest answers, not easy answers.
The very word secrecy is repugnant.
Clear leadership.
And we are, as a people,
not false claims and evasiveness and politics as usual.
Opposed to secret society.
But ours was a nation of the ballot, not the bullet.
And a secret proceedings.
As a people, we cannot afford to let any group of citizens or any individual citizen live or labor under conditions which are injurious to the common welfare.
Black, white, Latino, Asian, Native American, young, old, gay, straight, men, women, folks with disabilities, all pledging allegiance under the same proud flag to this big, bold country that we love. That's what I see. That's the America I know.
Not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
There is nothing wrong with America that cannot be cured by what is right with America.
Welcome to the Aggressive Progressive podcast. I am your host, Christopher Hahn. Thank you for liking, rating, reviewing, subscribing, and telling your friends about this podcast. I hope you're enjoying it. We had one of our best weeks ever in downloads last week, and I really do appreciate the support. Lots to talk about during the Trump years, of course, so I think people are tuning in looking for an alternative voice that's not just giving them talking points out of the party headquarters. Speaking of talking points, Donald Trump has us all following his talking points. I will say this about Donald Trump. He knows how to change the topic. I mean, at least in the short term. I don't know if it's going to be changed in the long term, given some of the actions he's taken, but he has been very successful at getting us to talk about other things when we should be talking about two things, really, primarily. We should be talking about the economy, and we should be talking about the lack of due process. But Donald Trump gets us talking about reopening Alcatraz. He gets us talking about, does he want to be Pope? Does he really want to be Pope? No, we know he doesn't really want to be Pope. First of all, I don't even think he's Catholic. He gets us talking, during an election where the focus really should be on whether or not we want to go back to this nonsense that we clearly went back to. He distracts us with issues that impact virtually no one, but everybody has an opinion on, right? Whether it be immigration itself, which I know, he's done a terrific job of making Americans believe that immigration impacts every single one of their lives, which is, by the way, true, but primarily in a positive way. Are there some Americans who have been victims of crimes committed by people here who entered this country without proper documentation or illegally, as he says? Yes. Is it also clear that first-generation immigrants and undocumented immigrants commit crimes, all crimes, serious, minor, at a much lower rate than American citizens? That too is true. But he wants you thinking that he's the only one who will stop them from coming in and kick them all out. Okay. Gets us distracted on that. Gets us distracted about the, 5 kids across this country who are trans and want to play sports. Right. I mean, how many kids are there in any given state? Okay. Maybe it's not 5 kids nationally, but maybe it's like 5 or 6 kids per state. To me, America, I just want to know, honestly want to know why we always fall for it. I don't need to know. I know why. Because we have short attention spans. We live in a world where everything's a click, everything's a fast forward, and he understands that better than anybody who's ever been involved with politics. And because he's now president of the United States, we are focused on every word that comes out of his mouth. So if he knows things are going a bad direction, oh my God, I can't believe I said that thing about people should only have two Barbie dolls instead of 30 every Christmas. I can't believe I said that. Let me just say I want to open Alcatraz. So they talk about that for a couple of hours. He wants to open Alcatraz, which was closed, I think, in the early 1960s because it was too expensive. By the way, only housed 300 people. He wants to reopen it. By the way, tourist attraction right now. People go to San Francisco to see Alcatraz. It's one of the reasons they go there. When I was in San Francisco about 10 years ago, I did not go to Alcatraz, but I did see it from the shore, right? I didn't go to the rock, as they called it in the movie. So he wants to reopen this thing, which was too expensive to run in the 1960s. What do you think it would be to run it now? Right? What do you think it would cost to run Alcatraz now and to refurbish it so that it can house prisoners? Probably a lot more than the 1960s. So all of this talk about Doge and government efficiency and all this nonsense about him wanting to save money, throw it out the window. He doesn't want to save money. He wants to be seen as tough. He wants to be seen as somebody you should fear, right? This is the Donald Trump we know. He is a showman, and almost everything he does, including, by the way, sending, hundreds of immigrants that he rounded up and claimed were undocumented, claimed were part of a gang, sending them off to this death camp in El Salvador. That is show too. Now, it's a show to show people who may wish to come to this country, don't come here. Look what's going to happen to you. It's a show to get some people to self-deport. But it is, mark my words, a show. It's also a show for his base, right? He wants his base to be fired up over what he's doing. And given the fact that they're raising prices on everything, even soon to be movies, I get it. I get that he needs to distract them and do something else. Change the topic. The American people will let you do it. And we've been letting him do it for 8 years now, 9 years now. Maybe it's time we focus a little bit more and start reminding the American people what really matters. And that is what they're paying for everyday goods and services and that their rights are protected. Listen to this. I'll be right back. Sunday was May 4th. Also known as the Star Wars holiday. May the 4th be with you. And over the weekend, the White House was trolling, right? They put out the picture of Donald Trump as Pope. And then on Sunday, May the 4th, they put out a picture of Donald Trump as like a Jedi with like bulging arms and looking younger than he has probably in 30 years. And, the whole thing, this whole art they put out, this whole Trump fantasy art, this dear leader art they put out. But the one honest thing in their May the 4th troll was they gave Trump a red lightsaber. Now, you guys know I'm a Star Wars geek, right? I mean, I grew up on it. I'm a kid, a Gen Xer who was, I believe, 5 years old when the first movie came out. So it was the perfect age for me to I might have been 6. I can't remember. 5 or 6. I was probably 5. And then by the time the second one came out, I was a little bit older, and Star Wars was like my life, right? And I had a name. I'm Chris Hahn. My comedy nickname was always Han Solo. It was, Star Wars was my life. So I know the difference between a red lightsabers are the color of the Sith. The Sith are the bad guys, right? So the Trump administration put this out. I didn't put it out. I didn't give Donald Trump the bad guy's lightsaber. But whoever drew that up for the president gave him a red lightsaber, probably because that person doesn't like the president. And he slipped a little truth in there that nobody caught, or maybe they did catch it and they're like, I like the red lightsaber. red is the only lightsaber color Siths use. It could have been any other color lightsaber, right? I guess they wanted to give him a red lightsaber because the Republicans are the red party in this country because, 50 years ago on a television screen, somebody decided that we'll make the map. We'll give the Democrats the blue and we'll give the Republicans the red when we're coloring in the states on election night, which is really how that happened, by the way. I just thought that was funny when I pointed it out to a few people and I tweeted about it. I was like, well, I guess it's a little bit of an honesty because he is a bad president. I mean, I don't know that I go as far to call him a Sith. I don't think he's that bad, but he's been pretty freaking bad. And I just keep coming back to the same thing. What is going to happen in this country when there isn't enough product on the shelves? And I'm not saying there's going to be food shortages in America, but there's going to be other shortages, right? It's coming. I mark my calendar for back to school, right? I know that the school year is we're still in the middle of school, but back to school shopping starts in August, late July and August. And that's when you're going to know if things are bad, right? Because that's when a lot of people go to the store for the same thing. They go for backpacks and school supplies and lunch boxes, and a lot of that stuff is made in China. And when they go to the store and that stuff's not available, forget about it costing more. I mean, it's going to cost more if it's there. That's a problem in and of itself. But it not being there is going to be the tipping point for a lot of people. I mean, a lot of people who are holding on to hope that Trump knows what he's doing. Believe me, he does not. Those of you holding on to hope that he knows what he's doing, you will get a rude awakening very soon, especially if you have school-age kids. And then, by Christmas, we'll all get the rude awakening. Because at Christmas time, people go shopping. Donald Trump said, oh, it's okay. Get $2 instead of $30. And then he, repeated, well, why do you need more than $2? So, yeah, I think it's going to be a rough couple of months. I actually was talking to an aspiring candidate who's thinking about running for Congress next year. And I told him that, his district is one that could flip, but it's not probably the top of everybody's list. But come September, if shelves are empty, I suggested that he make his announcement in front of empty shelves in some shopping space or with a small business owner who can't get supplies. Because that'll be an effective opening message, right? It may not be his opponent's fault, but it's going to be his opponent's problem. Listen to this. I'll be right back. Welcome back. I am your host, Chris Hahn. I'm at Christopher Hahn on X, Christopher Hahn NY on Instagram, and ChristopherHahn.com. Those are my socials. YouTube will be back up soon. I'm told they're reviewing it. I've seen the email. It's supposed to be 2 days. It's been 3 weeks. I don't know what's going on. So we'll figure something out real soon on how you can watch me do my video-only podcast. I post a lot of these right on X and sometimes right on Instagram. Christopher Hahn NY on Instagram, ChristopherHahn.com on X. So check me out there. So you can watch me doing this. Probably not this one because I'm just kind of in a laid back mood as I record this one. Trump was on Meet the Press, recorded interview on Sunday. And he said he doesn't know if everybody here in the United States is entitled to due process of law. Kristen Welker, who is the host of Meet the Press, asked a very good question. Well, how do you know that these people are criminals or even illegal immigrants if you're not going to have a hearing? He had no answer for that, right? I mean, this is, to me, obviously the economy is going to be the biggest issue in the election. But due process of law needs to be talked about all the time. I keep getting, people keep pushing back on me saying, well, why are Democrats talking about these? These are not people you want to defend. How do we know they're not people I want to defend? I mean, Donald Trump saw a photoshopped picture of Mr. Garcia, who they illegally deported to El Salvador 3 weeks ago, and he's still sitting there, that had MS-13 on his knuckles, and it was clearly photoshopped. I mean, it was the most worst Photoshop you could ever do. It's almost like if you saw a picture of me and I had a flowing head of hair. It was horrible photoshopping. And he was telling the anchor of ABC Evening News that this was a real photo, and pushed back on him when he said, no, that was photoshopped, Mr. President. No, you don't understand. It says MS-13 right on his knuckles. No, it didn't. It is, how do you know, Mr. President? He had no answer for that. No answer for that at all. Now, I will point out that in this interview, he went further than he ever has to deny he was running for a third term. So there is that. And he even actually suggested that Marco Rubio or JD Vance would be an excellent choice. I mean, clearly he's giving Marco Rubio additional responsibilities, right? I mean, Marco Rubio seems to be now in charge of multiple things, right? He's the National Archivist for some reason. I didn't even know that. He's the Secretary of State, which I think is a pretty big job. I would say it is one of the biggest jobs in the cabinet. I think, Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense, who, is Secretary of Defense a nut, Secretary of the Treasury. Those are the three, Attorney General of the United States, another one that God knows what's going on with. Those are the three most important jobs in the cabinet. Secretary of State is a very difficult job. Now he is not only the National Archivist, Secretary of State, head of USAID, he is also the National Security Advisor to the President of the United States, because the President is moving Mike Walls to the UN. And he says it's a promotion. Some people say it's a demotion. I think it's a higher profile job. And Mike Waltz is a former member of Congress, but now National Security Advisor, probably more important job. So, 6 on one, half of the dozen on the other. I know that the President blames him for Signalgate. And yes, he was the one who added the reporter. But Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, is the one who added the details about the attack as it was unfolding, who gave away the top secret plans. And they weren't battle plans, America. They were battle plans. They were mission plans, if you will. They weren't war plans, because everyone was calling them war plans. No, they were battle plans. They were actually mission-sensitive planning information that was being shared with a reporter on Signal, an unsecure app. So he's mad at Walls for it, but Pete Hegseth holds on. And I guess they're keeping Pete Hegseth around for now because they spent so much political capital and actual money getting him confirmed. I mean, this is the thing, America. Donald Trump didn't want to have two scalps during his transition, and he already had one in Matt Gaetz. And he adopted a no more scalps policy, right? This is why Mike Waltz isn't just being fired for this. He's going to the UN because they had to pull the other person they wanted to have in the UN because they were worried they might lose her ruby red congressional seat, and they probably would have, given the direction this country was going. Look, here's the problem for the president. The political capital has been spent. The senators who voted against their better judgment, they did it to support you. They did it because of all the pressure they were getting through the campaign that was being waged. And again, that campaign cost, probably tens of millions of dollars to try to influence these senators and get their constituents to call in. That's a lot of money. But these senators now are annoyed because he's turned out to be worse than they thought he'd be, right? The problems that they thought he'd have with the womanizing and everything, that hasn't surfaced yet. I say. The drinking hasn't surfaced yet. But the carelessness, the clearly being there over his head, the constant politicking, when again, this is a position that should be above politics, is starting to weigh on these senators. And many of them have elections next year. A lot of them in safe state seats, but nobody ever thinks their seat's safe. That capital was not capital well spent, but it is keeping him around, at least for now. I don't think it lasts forever. I don't think he's got much longer. I just don't. I see more screw ups coming on the horizon for Pete Hegseth. I just think he's way over his head. If somebody called me up and pick a job like that, I'd say no. It's not going to happen. I'll be right back. Welcome back. I am your host, Chris Hahn. I'm at Christopher Hahn on X, Christopher Hahn, NY on Instagram, and ChristopherHahn.com. Those are my socials. I'm also on News Nation all the time, so check me out there, wherever you watch TV. So just, buttoning up what's been going on the last couple of weeks. We have a president who doesn't value competence in government. And I keep coming back to this. What do the Democrats have to do? The Democrats need core values. They need to be able to simply articulate core values to the American people. Now, you don't like Donald Trump. I think his policies are horrible, but the man can simplify a message. And then it becomes hard to change the topic from the message he simplified, because especially Democrats, we like to overthink everything. But if we come up with 4 core values that we want to push for, right? 4 of them. And then, message around that. Don't overcomplicate it. Just message around it. And my 4 core values that I have been talking about, and I'll keep talking about, are that we need competency and accountability in government. And I think right now what we have is a very incompetent government. I think Pete Hegseth is the poster child for that, right? Mike Waltz, Pete Hegseth, RFK Jr. These are incompetent people who are over their head in the jobs that they were placed, and they are not being held accountable. Maybe Mike Waltz is the, exception to that rule. They're not really being held accountable for the actions that they're taking, particularly Hegseth and RFK Jr. I mean, we have measles outbreaks in this country right now at a rate that we haven't seen, since the vaccine was placed. And, here he is running around saying, I want to study, I'm going to figure out in the next 6 months what causes autism. Maybe he already has a theory, right? Because we've heard those theories. And he's going to say that's the cause. But he's not competent to hold the job, and he's not being held accountable. Democrats need to say, we will not tolerate incompetence. We're going to hire the most competent people, and if they mess up, we're going to hold them accountable. None of that's happening right now in our government. I think the American people would care about that. We need to say fighting for families is another one of our core values. And we don't have to define, here's the problem with Democrats right now. We define down what a family is, right? We say we're going to fight for working families. Or we're going to fight for families of color. Or we're going to fight for diverse families. No, we're going to fight for all families because we believe in families, right? Republicans want to talk about family values, and they don't want to make sure that people don't have enough food on their table. They're going to cut Medicaid. They're going to make it harder for people to do what they need to do. I think, fighting for families is a core value that Democrats need to embrace. And I think that they need to really, really consider that as one of their, just a key plank. And again, don't define it down. The problem Democrats face is that they sometimes do not express themselves in a way that is inclusive to all Americans. Defining it down is what we love to do. We like to categorize everybody, put them in a little box. No, we want everybody in the tent. Everybody. You're fighting for all families. And by the way, everything Democrats have done through their history has expanded to all Americans. The other thing we want to talk about is bodily autonomy. Republicans want government so small you could fit it in the back of your brain and it controls everything you do. I used to say Republicans want, government so small it fits inside a woman's vagina. That's true too. But right now, I think that the Republicans want to control everything about you. Everything. And I think that Democrats throughout their history have always fought for bodily autonomy, not just female bodily autonomy, but all people's bodily autonomy. Be what you want to be. The government has no role in it. So I think that's a core value that Democrats, should be fighting for here. But the the fourth thing that we need to understand is that Trump has retreated from the United States' traditional role as a leader in the world. He is retreating from that. And I think that a key core value of the Democratic Party needs to be that the American people, the United States of America, will reassert itself as the global leader, right? We need to be that global force for good. And part of the problem with Donald Trump right now is he's not even a force for good. He doesn't believe the United States of America should be leading on the world stage. He doesn't believe that the United States of America should be thinking about anything else that's outside of our borders, except for the fact that he wants to take in new territory because he feels that will make him a great president. If he expanded the United States, doubled the size of the United States by bringing in Canada, Greenland, made us a North American dominant emperor. What about Mexico? I mean, we have any interest in that. So I think that that's a key point too. But just keep it simple, right? Fighting for families is your economic platform. Competency in government is just the contrast with Trump. Global leadership is the contrast with Trump. This is what Democrats need to be about. Now, again, somebody tweak it. I'm not, I'm not the only person who gets a vote here. In fact, I don't even get a vote. But these are my top of my brain ideas. And I'm sure that I'll kick this around. I'll change them over the next couple of weeks. But I do believe that Democrats need to simplify their message. I think that's part of their problem. Democratic Party platform was like 20,000 pages long. The Republican Party platform was 12 pages long. I think that's too long. I think it needs to be a one-pager. I think the platform needs to be a one-pager, something that you could easily read through in one session on the bowl, if you will. So hopefully they get their act together and they figure this out. I just hope to God that people realize in this party that simplifying things doesn't mean we're excluding anybody, right? I don't want you to think that what I am advocating for here is exclusionary. It's not. What I am advocating for is simplification and inclusion so that people look at what the Democrats are doing and say, yeah, I could get behind that because that impacts me. And I think the more that, we talk about this stuff, the better off the Democratic Party is going to be. All right. I'm going to remind you now, as I always do, to seek the truth, question everyone and everything, even me. Seek the truth. I know it's out there, and I know you'll find it if you look for it. And I'll be back here again real soon to tell you the truth as I see it. I'm Chris Hahn. Thanks for joining me on the Aggressive Progressive Podcast.